Welcome back. So the CIA has admitted that waterboarding was used to extract information from terrorist suspects. But this is not the first controversy of its kind. The US detention center at Guantanamo Bay was established after the 9/11 attacks. In 2004, an FBI investigation reported various cases of detainee mistreatment at the base. US interrogation methods used at Baghdad's Abu Ghraib prison caused controversy worldwide in 2004. Here, prisoners suffered beatings and electric shocks in what caused severe embarrassment to the Bush administration. The US has since announced the prison will be closed. The US government also flew terrorist suspects to countries whose governments were known to use torture in what became known as extraordinary rendition. Joining us again are our guests in Birmingham, Mu'azzam Beg, former Guantanamo Bay detainee in London, Bob Stewart, former British Army commander, and here in Doha, Sa'aduddin Ibrahim, a human rights activist. Thank you very much indeed, gentlemen, for joining us once again. Mr. Sa'aduddin Ibrahim, this is not the first story about mistreatment of detainees and prisoners. We've heard what happened during the last 7 years in Guantanamo, in Bagram, in Kandahar, in different areas, plus the rendition program. What kind of impact or knock-on effect would these things have on the international community?
Well, you know, it is creating an uproar of condemnation, and this condemnation is mounting by the day. President Carter, former President Carter, has condemned these practices, and he has led a campaign to put an end to some of the acts passed after 9/11, the Patriot Act and other acts, the draconian acts that allow the Bush administration to use extra-legal measures to extract information or to pursue policies that are not monitored and are not evaluated properly by the judiciary and by the Congress. So there is, of course, a counter move. America has lost a great deal of moral
and apparently
high ground.
They're trying now to restore that. Mr. Bob in London, the argument that we have been hearing all the time is that in volatile areas, in difficult times, sometimes there is a use of torture and exceptional means to get or to wrench confessions from people. Now a universal clamp down on torture, do you think that would make the world a better place to live in?
No, because you can have all the rules you like and people will still break them. After all, in my view, Guantanamo Bay and extraordinary rendition are totally wrong. They're illegal and they're immoral, and they're clearly not going to work. However, I would like to point out that sometimes, and I don't like it, but sometimes it's true, certainly there are instances in the past where involving British soldiers captured or British officers captured by the German government in the Second World War, where they were tortured, they gave evidence, and actually it helped the opposition, the enemy, to close down spy networks, for example. So I don't think it's right to say that torture never has a result, and there is no evidence in history that torture, and there are more recent examples too.
No,
so
apparently
I'm not saying that, I'm saying it's wrong.
Mr. Bob, it seems that the concern of the Americans is that if they say publicly it's torture, then it could lead to retroactive legal action against CIA officials and US soldiers. So this is real dilemma. What do you think is the best way to deal with that?
The only way to deal with it is to be straight and honest. Torture has been used, and they should admit that. Clearly, torture's been used, and clearly the American administration are in a flux on this matter.
Mr. Mu'azzam, do you think the Americans are genuine about reviewing their policies?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I know no more than you, but I do know that the only way forward is to be open and honest about it, because, quite frankly, I agree with the previous speaker who said the American reputation has totally been destroyed by these allegations and indeed instances of torture, not just that, but Guantanamo Bay, Abu Ghraib and other instances.
Mr. Mu'azzam in Birmingham, You've been former detainee, you've shared reports and accounts of what happened with former colleagues and inmates there. Do you think that this first instance of saying that we made mistakes or we used that on 3 detainees could further lead to a change not only in the policies but perhaps seeing the Guantanamo Bay shut down in the near future?
Well, I don't know. I mean, you don't stick a knife in a person's back 9 inches deep, pull it back 6 inches and say we're making progress. The reality is that President Bush has already said that he may veto something that outlaws the use of torture or the prosecution of people within the CIA if they're ever caught torturing people. So I think the reality is that even if the admissions are made, they're made in circumstances where people may even accept that it's okay, that it's against Khalid Sheikh Mohammed or Abu Zubaydah or anybody else. But as I said before, it's been practiced in secret detention sites, and that's why the sites are so secretive, because nobody knows what happens there and there's no accountability.
Mr.
So
Ibrahim,
the 3 cases may have come out.
Students throughout the Arab world were told that America is the champion of freedom, liberties and human rights where the rule of law prevails. When people start learning such stories about abuse, rape, use of torture, don't you think that this is something would definitely embolden dictators in this part of the world, telling them if the Americans did that, why shouldn't we do that?
Absolutely, and this is one of the tragedies, is that with American administration using these practices have given our dictators here in this part of the world and elsewhere in the third world a lot of room, a license to pursue the same methods of oppression, repression, torture that they have been using for some time. And they say, they even look at the Americans saying, we told you so long time ago. You kept, blaming us, criticizing us, and now you know. When your security is at stake, you do the same thing as we did. So they get a license to continue oppression, repression, torture as usual. And that has been part of the tragedy. So
Mr. Bo Stewart, we have international regulations and resolutions that govern those issues, the United Nations resolutions against torture and also the Geneva Convention. But still it's a little bit very, perhaps because in times of war, lines blur. Are you in favor of international reviewing of these laws that would definitely apply on all the parties, including the Americans?
Well, I think the Geneva Conventions and other conventions are absolutely crystal clear. Abuse of prisoners is not allowed. And they're clear. And the people that are carrying out these practices are in breach of those rules, those regulations, those conventions. That's clear too. Now, if a government, and clearly the American government, does actually support some of these measures, I mean, the American president said he might not agree to a change. Quite frankly, I don't know quite where those people stand. I would say the sort of Nuremberg principle applies. People know that torture is not allowed. And if you carry out torture, regardless of the fact that your boss has told you you can do it, you are still responsible. And I think the Nuremberg principle should be applied to torturers.
Mr. Mu'adham, do you think that US officials who were involved in this story and countries who were part also of the extraordinary rendition program need to be now internationally sued to set the record for the international community that these things need to be stopped right now?
Well, I have to agree with Mr. Stewart on this, and the fact is the Nuremberg principle does apply in that the soldier, the enlisted soldier right down the bottom, can't claim any immunity, and neither can the person who issued the orders and created a situation and an environment where a person felt that doing these acts which amount to torture, which are torture, are in fact things that are prosecutable by the law. So I think it's very important that that happens, and it happens across the board. The United States has utilized countries like Egypt and Morocco and other places that do practice torture, and in some of the most extreme cases I've heard of people like Binyam Mohammed, who's now been sent to Guantanamo, where a razor blade was taken to his genitals by Moroccan intelligence with the presence of American intelligence there. So these things have to be made accountable. People have to be brought to book for what they've done.
Bob Stewart in London and Sa'ad Ibrahim in Doha, thank you very much indeed for your contribution to this edition of Inside Story on the use of waterboarding. Thank you so much for joining us here on this edition of Inside Story. We welcome your comments and suggestions. Please email them to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. Goodbye for now.